ignoring the semantics in the dictionaries.
It ceases to be lineal at speed, by the way.
No, I can see that.
Yes, it ceases to be lineal, and you begin to take it as a gestalt.
Disappearance.
Antisocial children and such people dare look at the environment. The emperor's new clothes are perfectly visible to them, but to well-adjusted, respectable people. But there are some things that you read and reread, but they're always different.
Do you think I could have read the Gutenberg Galaxy that way?
I don't know. But actually, you see, all you need for the Gutenberg Galaxy are maybe a few basic...
I think that Gutenberg Galaxy was kind of one of the later books that I didn't even actually read linearly. I just read sections as I needed them when I was writing.
Structural vacuum.
Surely reading is half of it is thinking as well as actually.
Remember, we went into that subject.
Winnipeg, when he was actually 4. Whence did the wondrous mystic art arise?
What Myriad has done is to find a way.
With TV, every night becomes election night.
Let me just ask you.
I mean, any classic.
No,
Descartes can be put on one page. So can Plato. The pattern is that the civilian is part of the military establishment.
You cannot trust an Englishman in the dark.
I live in a perpetual disagreement with my partner, yes.
Patterns and exciting matters in the banalities, doing a sort of corporate psychiatric job on them, instead of merely selecting and sorting and discarding and ignoring nearly everything around her.
And the little areas in which we permit ourselves any kind of...
Recognize how fortunate we are. Fortunate that these men and women can say what they believe. And that you who listen to them, if you don't like it.
Oh, wow!
You'll watch anything!
Crying to mama or to television that they've been insulted or something?
Welcome back, stupid viewers.
Service environments have taken the place of political policies.
And seamless integration of brands into great content. Advertising is the critical ingredient in bringing great content to consumers.
That's right. Advertising is the critical ingredient in great content, which is why HBO has never produced anything worth watching. I mean, even they admit it's not TV. Myriad makes great content possible by retroactively inserting brands into reruns.
I never started. Everything they ever had to say could be put on one page.
Wait, let me just ask you this then. You must have anticipated the reaction of an audience to the style of your book because you realized that they were used to reading.
One of the biggest resources that we possess and one of the main sources of human satisfaction is from language itself, the languages we use every day. This is a kind of software, information world, which becomes very important in the electric age. It was taken for granted in the 19th century. Now it's becoming, it's now possible, you see, to get along without language. It's possible to use abstract symbols, computer-wise, and to abandon words altogether.
Pattern recognition and military operation of empire building and icon making. If we had the slight of consciousness of social responsibility instead of the with a sort of a private subconscious, totally inadequate to our technology, we would teach our children in our schools how to protect themselves against media fallout and advertising fallout. We would teach our children in our schools how to protect themselves against media fallout and advertising fallout. We don't understand information movement and image making as warfare at all. We call this advertising. Actually, Madison Avenue is a major military operation, vastly aggressive, and out to conquer empires, territories within the human heart, the human senses. It is a huge military operation of empire building and icon making. If we had the slightest consciousness of social responsibility, instead of just a sort of a private subconscious, totally inadequate to our technology, we would teach our children in our schools how to protect themselves against media fallout and advertising fallout.
Run through a motherfucker face. I can't fucking see shit. Google was initially
terrified. It's a mess. Age, hyphenate. Words are inward.
Called back rub. So there's your connection. Accidentally called mediumism massage a play on his own.
Cogito really means the experience of thinking. The mind, remember, works much faster than electricity. Popular entertainment. Racing through the labyrinth of the mind quickly and coming out with the answer quick first.
I'm going to mention an aspect of media which I've been working on a good deal lately. And I have a preface to a new book which begins, all of man's artifacts of language, of laws, of ideas, hypotheses, tools, clothing, computers, all of these are extensions of our physical bodies. Hans Haas, in The Human Animal, sees this human power to create additional organs as an enormity from the evolutionary standpoint. An advance laden with unfathomable consequences. The laws of the media are observations on the operation and effects of human artifacts on man and society, since, as Hans Haas further notes, a human artifact is not merely an implement for working upon something, but an extension of our body effected by artificial additional organs, with which to a greater or less degree we owe our civilization. One thing overlooked by Hans Haas is the absence of biological or psychological means of coping with the effects of our own technical ingenuity in creating new organs. The problem is clearly indicated in some simians in man's presumptuous brain, when he says that when, about 500,000 years ago, man began slowly to embark upon the road to cultural advance, an entirely new situation arose. The use of implements and the control of fire introduced artifacts of which the cortex could avail itself for purposes of living. These artifacts had no relationship whatever to the organization of the body and could therefore not be integrated into the functioning of the brainstem. What Simmons is saying is that our natural responses to media and to technology are irrelevant. That we cannot trust our instincts or our natural physical responses to new things. They will destroy us. How are we to bypass or offset the merely physical response to new technology and new environments created by new technologies? This problem has not been raised by anybody, except that we have to live with it every day. Edgar Allan Poe has a story called The Descent into the Maelstrom, which...
This came in his final television appearance, a lecture in the spring of 1979 at York University in Toronto. He had begun to look at all human artifacts, as he called them, from the earliest tools to the electric media, including computers, as extensions of the human body and the human nervous system, and as components of a human evolution such as Darwin could have never imagined. But Teilhard de Chardin had imagined such a thing. And I think it's entirely possible that...
Teilhard de Chardin is a little more aware of the meaning of the electronic than Darwin could possibly have been.
McLuhan might have been about to make explicit the convergence of his thoughts with those of the great Jesuit mystic.
I'm going to mention an aspect of media which I've been working on a good deal lately. Edgar Allan Poe has a story called The Descent into the Maelstrom, which had tremendous influence in the 19th century on the poets and symbolists like Baudelaire and Flaubert and others. In The Descent into the Maelstrom, Poe imagines the situation in which a sailor who has gone out on a fishing expedition is caught by not watching the turn of the tide in a huge maelstrom or whirlpool, and he sees that his boat will be sucked down into this thing. He begins to study the action of the storm, the technique of the suspended judgment. He observes that some things disappear and some things reappear. By studying the things that reappear, to which he attaches himself to one of these, he saves himself. Pattern recognition in the midst of a huge, overwhelming, destructive force is the way out of the maelstrom. The huge vortices of energy created by our media present us with similar possibilities of evasion, of consequences of destruction. By studying the pattern of the effects of this huge vortex of energy in which we're involved, it may be possible to program a strategy of evasion and survival. The survival cannot be trusted to natural response or natural instinct, since the brain stem is not provided with any means of responding to man-made environments. I'm going to read a passage from Anthony Storr in The Human Aggression, in which he observes, "It is obviously true that most bomber pilots are no better, no worse than other men. The majority of them, given a can of petrol and told to pour it over a child of 3 and ignite it, would probably disobey the order. Yet put a decent man in an aeroplane a few hundred feet above a village, and he will kill without compunction, drop high explosives, inflict appalling pain and injury on men, women, and children. The distance between him and the people he is bombing make them into an impersonal target, no longer human beings like himself with whom he can identify." This is characteristic situation. That bomber pilot is really very much like the person introducing any new technology using ordinary human business resources and existing institutional means. None of these people ever consider what will be the impact or the effect of what they do when they pull that trigger. Quite apart from the use of weaponry at a distance, there is the effect of changes in man himself which result from using his own devices to create environments of service. Coping with an electric environment of instant information. And it was precisely at that time that Rousseau invented the theory that the environment was the great educator.
That's right, and a lot of load of rubbish it was. Absolute
However,
rubbish, which has produced the present chaotic
nature
situation.
as a teaching machine is now capable of being programmed by human intention. Any new service environment such as that created by railways or motor cars or telegraph or radio deeply modify the very nature and image of the people who use them. Radical changes of identity happening in very sudden brief intervals of time have proved more deadly and destructive to human values than were wars fought with hardware weapons. In the electric age, the alteration of human identity by new service environments of information have left whole populations without personal or community values to a degree that far exceeds the effects of food and fuel and energy shortages. It is hoped that many improvements on this approach will be suggested by the readers of this book. Meantime, I suggest it possible to begin by noticing the criminal in society gets it this way too, without anybody trying to understand what goes on.
Well...
So you can see what we're talking about here is communication. I'm looking at a phrase here of Francis Bacon, Lord Bacon. He says, aphorisms representing a knowledge broken do invite men to inquire farther, whereas methods carrying on show and so forth do secure them as they go farther. I use the aphorism knowledge broken thoughts in the presentation deliberately to tease and to encourage people to look into the situation.
It's compressed. Not
underground press. And
what does the artifact amplify or enhance in the case of any new form of medium or technology? A, what does it enhance? B, what does it obsolesce? And third, what does it bring back from a distant past that was unexpectedly scrapped earlier? And finally, what does it flip into when pushed to the full limit of its power? I'll give you a few examples of this pattern of these four phases or stages in the development of any artifact whatever. I just have in front of me, in isolation from other things, camera. A, it enhances by its snapshotting aggression and private power over people. B, it obsolesces privacy. It retrieves the past as present. It brings back the big game hunter. Bringing him home alive means bringing people home alive. Photographic journalism is very big game hunting. It flips into the public domain. The clock amplifies work. Until clock, what we call work was almost impossible to organize. It obsolesces leisure. It retrieves history as art form by fixed chronology, a measurable sequential chronology capable of visual time as measured by the clock. It reverses when pushed all the way into the eternal present, a nowness. Electric media in general amplify information range, scope, pushing information into a service environment by simultaneity, obsolesces the visual, the connected, the logical, the rational, retrieves the subliminal, audile, tactile dialogue involvement, brings back, rather, reverses, finally, all hardware into software.
For many moons, or centuries, that the only way to learn is to go from what you already know to something you don't. In Plato's terms, led him to suppose that really all we could ever know was something we had once known in another existence. Deja vu.
This is Louis Forthdale, July 17th, 1978, TL 4011B, Topics in Communication.
And so they haggled and they bargained, but there were no uniform prices. It's as somebody once said, that the handwritten book was a second-hand market. Every book was different, and you settled the price by second-hand haggling.
But I can only suggest that confusion of an extreme kind is the normal human condition in all sensory and perceptual matters. If anybody has the idea that perception is something they do all the time, they have immense shortcomings.
When you make a sandwich at home, do you reach down past the first 3 or 4 pieces of bread to go down and get the good bread?
And then start looking at the facts. No perception in the sense of actual reading of the language of one's, and the modes of one's environment is very rare. Only artists are trained in this skill. They develop this skill out of intense fascination with the problem, but they tend to specialize in one or another of the medium.
Surely reading is...
Now the credit card is a flip over to this acoustic world.
The new language of industry.
Credit is very mysterious stuff. It's made of information only.
Early gold had a ground.
Money is now information. It's not hardware anymore. It says credit. And credit is very mysterious stuff.
Immediate role of art in correcting the bias of perception.
There's always one man in a million for whom any problem is obvious.
Industry.
If you out there in those millions of people in the mass audience, there's always one guy for whom you say, where's the problem? You do this, and it's simple. Now, how do you reach him? Well, what you do is to put on the air not the knowledge, but the ignorance.
Information retrieval.
That is, you explain the problem. The problem is this, and what we have done is this. We have done these things to solve this problem. And somebody out there will say, but you are doing all the wrong things.
The electronic surround is that the audience becomes workforce. I can only suggest that confusion of an extreme kind is the normal human condition in all sensory and perceptual matters. If anybody has the eye.
And get the good bread.
The technique of discovery itself.
Organized ignorance as a way of bypassing fusion and as block to discovery brings me on to the subject of
data processor on a very large scale. The young person today is a data processor large scale.
Will you take me to Winnipeg?
I will, someday. Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, Winnipeg.
And New York?
Sure, New York.
Unethical to inquire about a fellow patient, but how is his lordship?
His lordship?
The Bishop of Winnipeg.
Oh, you know the bishop.
My aunt's first cousin. I heard you were treating him.
You know, you're behaving just like I did last Tuesday night in Winnipeg.
I'll talk about the general strikes in Seattle and Winnipeg.
And with all its effects, social consequences carefully dramatized. Finnegans Wake is a drama, it's a play. And the actors in the play are the media themselves. And with all its effects. carefully dramatized, and the actors in the play are the media themselves. Finnegans Wake is a drama, it's a play.
I don't think I can dance to these.
Marshall McLuhan, the director of the University of Toronto's Institute of Culture and Technology, has done a great deal of research into the question of audience participation in the electronic media, and he's achieved quite extraordinary insights into the way in which it determines the participational level of the audience.
The tendency of the audience...
First. Actually, there's a lot of blah blah in this film.
As it becomes more and more participant, is to eliminate content in the ordinary sense. Just as in abstract painting, representational content tends to go out. As the painting becomes more and more cartoon-like and abstract, this permits a very much higher degree of do-it-yourselfness and involvement on the part of the viewer, demands that he do a great deal for himself.
Very important, and this is sort of an implicit metaphor, is the way that Finnegan wakes.
Michael Finnegan. And by eliminating, you see, whereas if he merely recognizes some...
You are known to the bureaucracy by your data bank. They know all about you. They know more about any one of us than we will ever know. Because it's all, it's like on that page, it's all there. Everything about us. It's like the book in the heavens, you know, recording angels and all that. We got recording people right here now with us. You're one of them.
Yeah, except that I just want my things after I've done the I'm not kept the tape of my discussion with Sarah.
Well, now that I think is not smart. I think it'd be invaluable to have.
Well, yeah, except that I think it's a...
They got fouled up over policies.
And
He was a professor, a very learned man.
This has become the new human occupation in the electronic age. Espionage is now the total human activity, whether you call it...
This is called public relations, and it's called...
I saw a database where they were collecting everyone's pant sizes.
Well, that's about the situation on the book.
So, so you were saying, and then we went off onto the tangent, that your books had the effect they had because they were post-literate books.
Only one or two of my books had any effect.
In the field of communication, I'd like to say something else now at a much more personal level.
Yeah.
Remember, we went into that subject.
You just provided the relax.
No, I didn't.
We hear anything I've ever...
That's fascinating.
I have no desire to move into the world that I understand so well.
It's going to be satire. All my work is satire. All of it is satire means using everyday words as satire on the side.
Green?
All the civilization, literally civilization, the ideas that grew out of that world.
The Chinese ideogram is a wonderful instrument of unified sensations. It is so richly unified that most people in our 20th century have begun to study it very carefully as a corrective to our highly specialized alphabet.
And the visual space is...
So, by the way, the stripteaser, by bearing my mind, is putting on her public, and she's not ever naked.
a reader. For example, the word...
Yeah, he gathered those quotes from my stuff.
Oh, I see.
No, I didn't write it.
And the pictures you didn't select?
No.
Really? Oh, that's very extraordinary.
Transparent overlays of organization.
Cells.
One was concerned entirely with communication, as a matter of fact.
For example, the word read, to read, means to guess, to rate out.
Perceiving of perception. Experiencing time and place.
The clock image is highly visualized and highly spectralized and really leaves out the experience of time.
Exactly.
The moment you experience time, you're in the existential world, the instantaneous, the all at once, the total involvement.
Exactly.
So you could say that everything we call existence comes in with a rush.
Thanks to overdoing it, I wrote this in Playboy some months ago, the reversal of the overheated medium.
The reversal of the overheated image is something that has happened with the miniskirt.
You're rather suggesting that there's no more sex, eh?
Non-sex, form of corporate rather than private, cool rather than hot, and sort of non-sex. After all, tribal people are not very excited about sex. By the way, isn't it said that John Donne was the first person to use the word sex in our modern sense of something separate?
I think so. Sometime around John Donne's time, love just was phased out and sex came in. Would you say that love was really a very emotional experience as contrasted with sex, which was much more a sensational experience? Would that be fair?
Love is, I suppose, something pervasive and extended over a long period of time as compared with what is the phrase, the poor benefit of a bewildering moment.
When we step up sex a bit, why, it ceases to be sex, it just becomes what it is for all tribal people.
Apposition, meaning figure ground. No connections, just
Sex has an exciting,
juxtaposition.
falling, alluring thing. It's finished. And the miniskirt is shouting out very loud.
We're just having a good time.
Well, then don't keep them all to yourself.
I put you on as an audience. I wear you as my clothing.
Do you think that this is an equal discussion?
It isn't.
That you are equal to each one of us, or do you think
I don't know.
You are equal to the whole group? Because it's mostly...
Well, all right, ask a stripteaser.
People ask why, and they
Is a stripteaser equal to the whole group?
I don't usually think of a discussion group like that.
Now, a stripteaser has to bear herself in order to put on her audience.
Every age creates as a utopian image, a nostalgic rearview mirror image of itself.
And when she puts on her audience, she is a corporate power. When she steps off the stage, she is a private nobody. I put you on as an audience. By bearing my mind.
It was not long before Satan
well enough to welfare,
though loyal
worst
and pure,
fucking
the
parade
machines
and don't even get me started.
Robot. Probably the people on Reddit.
Do you think that in the future it's realistic that people are going to be dating robots?
Definitely. So.
Shit. Ugh.
Listen, is he as short as you are? That big. Come up right
there. Did you hear about the midget who joined the Ku Klux Klan and had to wear a pillowcase?
We're just having a good time.
Well, then don't keep them all to yourself. It's antisocial.
Are moving information at speeds that the planet cannot cope with.
Present is the, and this will delight you,
with electricity and the all-at-onceness.
We don't understand information movement and image making in warfare at all. We call it advertising. Actually, medicine avenue is a major military operation. If we had the slightest consciousness,
Pattern recognition.
Other kinds of information not directed to an audience, for example, dictionary entries, they're not aimed at producing an effect in an audience. They're there to inform. End of story.
Get up in the big dictionary.
1400 BC, on the island of Knossos, there was invented the first phonetic alphabet. It was very primitive, but nevertheless it did have phonetic symbols in it. Now, Knossos is very close to Egypt. At the same time in Egypt, there was reigning a pharaoh named Akhenaten. And he was the first pharaoh in Egypt to sponsor illustrative painting.
Civilization. It was a wonderful world.
And I found this at the time extremely interesting because I wanted to find out, being convinced that there is a definite parallel between the development of phonetic writing and verisimilitude or visual reality in painting. As soon as I encountered these things, as soon as I encounter either one or the other, I want to find it.
Are you kidding me? Understanding media, the extensions of man, was like my good nightmare.
Or on the shape of the cheap wit of the New Yorker.
And
probably with you on Earth.
And with all its effects, social consequences carefully dramatized. Finnegans Wake is a drama, it's a play, and the actors in the play are the media themselves.
As a guest on Airbnb, the knowledge that you display on Coral, the knowledge that you display on
Vydyosyty,
they'll all live together in one place. And this will live in some kind of reputation dashboard.
There has to be a stranger to may have a philosophical doubt. Otherwise, you're going to go gossip.
That will paint a picture of your reputation capital. Now, this is a concept that I'm currently researching and writing my next book on, and currently define as the worth of your reputation, your intentions, capabilities, and values across communities and marketplaces.
I hardly know Sir just at present. At least I knew who I was this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then.
Will you take me to Winnipeg?
So it's very difficult to imagine for a sighted person.
Well, when you say imagine, you mean visualize. That's all we mean by
That's
imagine.
right. Absolutely.
You cannot visualize the non-visual.
Visualize and conceptualize.
They have immense shortcomings.
When you make a sandwich at home, do you reach down past the first 3 or 4 pieces of bread to go down and get the good bread?
And to me is to guess.
Art in general gives you about a generation, at least a generation of notice in advance of technological change.
I've known Marshall for 30 years now. It developed about it last night.
The art forms themselves will take on characteristics that really belong to something that has not been invented yet or hasn't surfaced yet. Seurat and Rouault were painting television long before television.
Actually, there's a lot of...
Obsolescence does not mean the conclusion, but rather the beginning. It is one of circuit.
I think twisting is itself a kind of untwisting of the daily task. People get wound up during the day and they're deeply involved in some role, and then they unwind at night in this mimetic pattern.
Instant circuitry and involvement, and its boundaries are not national at all.
Contents
of television would change much this process.
You know, you may have seen a New Yorker joke. A couple are watching TV, and one says, when you think of the vast educational potential of TV, aren't you glad it doesn't? This is based on the assumption, you see, that it's the content that does the educating, not the medium.
Blah blah in this film.
It's like there was lightning in my house.
Kids reach. They don't want jobs. The next phase is the dropout executive.
Art is anything you can get away with. Electrically, we live in a world which is totally interrelated by information.
Yeah.
And so paranoia would seem to be the most natural condition for electronic man. However, the word paranoia is an adjective applied. By the way, Levi-Strauss makes a strange remark in The Savage Mind. Mm-hmm. He said, in the savage world, or native world, everything is related to everything. And he says that is paranoia.
Yeah.
Now,
Wait, can you...
an adjective applied to literate man, by a literate man,
yeah,
and is not irrelevant at all to the condition. The job of the artist is to maladjust the user of the equipment. The euclid has been phased out because the eye has gone back into the rest of the sense. It was Rimbaud's phrase, de règlement de tous les sens.
Yeah.
This is the job of the artist, to upset you, to keep you off balance all the time. The meeting point of the senses, the hidden and the visible. Where the two cross, you have icon. Where the hidden world meets the visible. In our own day-to-day, the acoustic world is always meeting the visual world. That is, the hidden world of sound is always bumping into the world of sight, the visual world. And where the two meet is icon. And this is what I do. That's my job.
Call yourself an artist.
In that sense, yes.
Yeah.
My approach has to be used if anybody wants to get hold of anything. Paranoid about, what do we call it, pollution. The problem is this, and what we have done is this. Time as the alphabet. To Greece. Now the Phoenicians were not in Greece. They were all around in the Mediterranean world, but they weren't in Greece. And therefore the opposite of a point of view. School.
That's essentially it.
When Cubism came in, 1900 or so, it was called multi-locational. Unaware, I've been aware that there has been a hang-up here, but unaware of why.
This Mrs. Equitone is really a very useful bit because the whole British upper class mimic, with voice, they mimic the world of printing. This puts the lower classes way down because they still retain many of the characteristics of pre-print in their voices. So the class structure in England is quite simply simulating print with the voice.
Tell dear Mrs. Equitone I bring the horoscope myself.
One must be so careful these days. Now, Equitone, notice, is the name of speaking in prose. Tell dear Mrs. Equitone I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. You see, you talk as if you were a printed page.
Equitone, yeah.
Yes.
Equal tone.
And that is the effect that print has had on speech. It gets rid of all the hijinks of the spoken word.
Yeah, that's the great English.
No. Correct English is like talking like a book. Then,
yeah, it's going to be like talking like TV.
Now, that is a very interesting. BBC English is very much.
Oh, it's like Mrs. Equitone.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that the implication is that now we're going to be talking like TV?
Well, you see, Mark Twain already reverted to dialect, and Eliot said he updated the English language.
Yeah,
That's a very interesting passage in to criticize the critic.
Somebody said, scratch an Oxford man and you'll find a Cockney. Structuralism being a popular and acceptable concept.
As a small child, I was told at the dinner table over and over again by my father, would you get up and say that to a group of men?
They loathe the importation of moralistic terms from the Judeo-Christian realm into the pagan realm of mass media. You know, mass media are completely amoral. It's completely amoral, okay?
I'm so funny.
Value judgments in these matters are pure escapism. They serve that function of taking us off the hook, taking the heat off. So as long as people, you know how people like to pour scorn and indignation on comics and popular entertainment, this saves them any need to cultivate their minds or to do anything about cultivation in the arts. As long as they're rigorously opposed to all this other stuff, they don't have to do a thing. It's pure escapism.
Okay.
Well, you cannot have purpose. The word run comes from rune, R-U-N-E. Okay.
And if
Beast
that I may see thee.
Or a little bit.
Yeah.
They got a big structure. A poet can learn more history in a single instant of anecdote or a gesture.
Okay.
Than a historian can make in volumes.
What is funny for you people? What's funny?
And they all hissed very loudly.
Yeah, which
by technology. Hamlet,
the backside was or the front side?
You know,
among the immigrant Italian women.
Very loudly.
So if I see a girl in a Mercedes, what does she have?
Being sexually harassed.
Yeah, which
by technology? Hamlet,
the backside was or the front side?
You know,
among the immigrant Italian women. If you were an independent thinker, you had no options as a woman except to become a nun.
This is typical. He makes statement after statement after statement.
Okay.
He doesn't develop them.
A guy who went to the drugstore to pick up a few items for his wife.
And I do that too, except that I am careful to make my statements annoying.
In the first edition, understanding the
says, but what disturbs me is that...
Listen to this.
I consider Marshall McLuhan one of the great masters of my college years.
We're moving into a world where women will be the only power. The FBI's down.
After one of...
They become Archie Bunkers.
Print culture is inevitable.
Are crapped on, you know.
And then print culture is inevitably hypocritical. What it says and what it does has to be different.
Yeah. Is this in some way related to the fact...
Metropolis today is a classroom. The ads are its teachers. The classroom is an obsolete detention home, a feudal dungeon. The instantaneous global coverage of radio TV makes the city form meaningless, functionless. Cities were once related to the realities of production and intercommunication. Not now.
Until writing was invented, man lived in acoustic space. Boundless, directionless, horizonless. It is inevitable. In the dark of the mind. The eye and the ear just are totally divorced. In the world of emotion. By primordial intuition. By terror. Everything you hear is at variance with everything that you see. Speech is a social chart of this bog.
That this was a hidden environment.
Of the written word. The word became the static symbol, applicable to and separate from that which is symbolized. It now belonged to the objective world. It could be seen. It was a thing.
A goose's quill put an end to talk.
The goose quill put an end to talk. It abolished mystery.
Abolished mystery. Gave architecture and towns.
Gave architecture and towns. It brought roads and armies, bureaucracy.
Brought roads and armies, bureaucracies. It was the basic metaphor with which the cycle of civilization began.
It was the basic metaphor with which the cycle of civilization began.
July 17th, 1978, TL 4011B, Topics in Communication. Our guest speaker today is...
We're familiar with Marshall McLuhan, grew up here, went to Calvin, just like Neil. Born in Edmonton, moved...
The whole, we're beginning it right here.
Scouting.
You and I are, at this moment, John, we are interfacing, making discoveries, talking about problems for which we are only beginning to see the solutions ourselves. We don't know the answers, we just know that we can find answers if we keep working at it.
Yeah. How did we ever get...
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
It's so dumb as to tell people or work on the whole idea that you have to go to the unknown through the known. It's the only way never to get to the unknown.
to Winnipeg.
Professor Marshall McLuhan from the University of Toronto.
When he was actually 4.
Whence did the wondrous mystic art arise of painting speech and speaking to the eyes, that we by tracing magic lines are taught how to embody and to color thought?
Well, you know, it's the same thing in any place.
It seems to me that the milieu, in looking back over your work, interior, which is
this whole insight into the fact that this was a hidden environment, this habit of thought.
Writing did not merely record language, it was a totally new medium of expression and communication which the spoken word came in turn to imitate.
Yeah.
Remember, we went into that subject.
I make most of my discoveries while talking, not while writing.
Well, for example, when I look at...
And without a public, there is no game. And I'm not wanting to take over the show.
Go ahead. Nor were you accused of that. You know, maybe I can't ask you this thing then that I've thought of asking you.
Easterbrook likes to talk of your taking over seminars and becoming the professor.
For Edmonton, yeah.
All situations.
But they don't do any of the talking. They sit there and...
I'm delighted to have an opportunity to...
This makes the audience more participative in the game.
No question about it, it does.
I thought that Mr. Sayers would be an ideal person to have a word about the effect of the instant TV playback on the football game.
Me? What'd I do?
Well, I think this made TV watching. More people watch the game now because they can see the instant playback. They can see blocks they didn't see, and this put a lot of focus on the line play.
And as a means of organizing human energy. The ad off. This is.
This is eliminating the prejudices of specialists. Oh, I think that's what they're trying to do. Organizing? Organizing. Well, now, there is a term that is banded up.
I mean, like the resources speak so fast. The resources of knowledge. If we could all learn out our own secrets, we've got it made.
You have to, otherwise you're going to be talking about bird songs.
We're really deep with it.
And, you know, casting his perils before swings. This is a phrase out of Finnegan, and it's typical of the technique of Finnegan. Joyce regarded the human language as the biggest storage system of human knowledge and perception that anywhere. What we're doing with the computer up to now is merely giving it to the librarians and to the catalogers. But the possibility of retrieval as a form of discovery is something we all know from our own memories. When we recall something, we tend to make discoveries. We certainly tend to make changes in the pattern of the thing we know. His own use of that vast store of human perception was to retrieve from it in a pattern which made discovery natural.
Though he might have been more humble, there's no police like Holmes.
Though he might have been more humble, there's no police like Holmes.
This is a very weird, I think perhaps this is where the atom bomb brought people into a paradox.
James Joyce, I'm quoting him, from Finnegans Wake. Now, though he might have been more humble,
After the West shall shake the East awake.
While yet you have the night for more.
Suggesting that as Western hardware, old technology, hits the East.
which an unclassifiable verb.
Tony is a bit of the old Blarney, Killarney, the minstrel boy to the war is gone, all that sort of crap. All those old folk songs of England, Irish, Scotland.
By the way, speaking of sick jokes, there was a Toronto nightclub recently where somebody said, "Are there any sick jokes about Marshall McLuhan?" was the question. Well, that's supposed to be a sick joke. Are there any sick jokes about McLuhan? Who is Marshall McLuhan? What is the grievance behind the sick joke?
And what?
To understand anything.
I say word, W-O-R-D, word. By the time I get to the erd, all the rest is gone.
To accelerate the learning process. But he is invited just to plunge right in here. Children are all geniuses until the age of 5 or 6 because they're using all their faculties simultaneously. Then they learn to specialize and separate their faculties and become civilized.
There are no connections, but there are interfaces and resonances and constant music.
Getting your attention.
If you pick up a newspaper, you are the content, because it only means what it means to you.
This is an illusion nourished by the Greco-Roman world only. No place in the world, no time in the world ever had this visual space except that nourished by the phonetic alphabet.
Marshall McLuhan.
And then he says that you don't take any account of the Phoenician alphabet.
Oh, that's our alphabet is the Phoenician alphabet. Sure.
You mean that?
I'd like to call myself a UFO.
When you say A, B, C, D, abracadabra is for English. A, B, C, D is for English.
Well, that All in the Family, did you watch that one?
Yeah, a couple of episodes were about enough.
Oh,
Just shouting and yelling, getting mad.
Now, Newhart, I enjoy Newhart much more. Oh, heavens.
He's soft, though.
He's cool. To speak quietly and rationally about the most outrageous situations.
It's machines talking to other machines.
Said to the cabbie was, "Take me where I can get scrubbed." There's a desperate human need to understand these processes, and a great need to avoid value judgments until we understand them. We don't have a clue as to who to blame for anything. Really. The act of placing the blame is itself escapism.
A speech is not hardware because it is not fragmentary and specialized.
So what? If computers can do it better than us, then what's the difference?
When it approaches the written form,
And I think they would find that if they tackled the problem,
approaches the written form
that I'm working with, they would quickly begin to write the way I write.
It breaks down into visual characteristics and components that are fragmentary.
And I can see why the new ones create such revulsion, total recoil.
That's not a book. Jerry Hagel put it together. He makes 50%. The chapter to the pictures theory gets 25%. My guess.
And to that extent, you get civilization and hardware.
Coming then to Xerox and the big leaks, the enema of the people. Don Quixote I mentioned. The world of, well, it's like the Marx Brothers. It's a world of crazy adventures.
Circuitry, whatever.
McGraw held that Harcourt, Brace, Shabanovich are remainder today, the executive dropout. Yeah. You got it for $1.
Well, I have it. I got it a few years ago.
Civilization is based on hardware. Yeah.
Harold Innis has the same problem. That's the form of the first newspapers. Essays.
Surrealist poem.
How'd I do that?
The Brady Bunch, instead of a house, they live in a palace. Jam with fucking Mike, and Mike with fucking Alice.
Hagel gets 50, I get 10. They used a literate audience of slaves, but they themselves, as aristocrats, would not read or write. Oh, heavens no.
As the kids who are the natural citizens of this electronic world.
Sensory commons.
So you've got the slowest environment and the fastest people together.
A generation gap. People need to meditate on the nature of gaps very much.
So it's not some little man sitting behind the curtain figuring out what we're going to show.
This again is not ordinarily known for classical stuff. But who wrote Plato? It wasn't written by Plato. It was recorded by his amanuenses, his slaves, the way you're recording me on this thing. But that's a figure, but it had another ground.
To read means to guess. Look it up in the big dictionary. The word redan means to guess, and reading is actually an activity of rapid guessing. Because any word has so many meanings, including the word reading, many, many meanings, that to select one in a context of other words requires very rapid guessing. That's why a good reader tends to be a very quick decision maker.
So Xerox, the electric thing, is a complete revolution.
And that's precisely why
And it's away from the eye.
I do not wish
It's all back to the ear again.
to move into it.
It's all acoustic.
Because I understand it, I much prefer the old mildewed world of the 18th century book.
People leapt from childhood into adulthood overnight. This is what happens under electric conditions again. There is no really childhood is disappearing.
Responsibility, instead of just a sort of a private subconscious.
People leapt from childhood into adulthood overnight.
They are artists. Remember, an artist is primarily concerned with getting your attention.
As a lyric personal use of a public medium.
The end is in
It becomes much more enjoyable if you pull the paper.
Clotheslines, hemlines.
You can see from the miniskirt, which is that the end is in.
Joey, I'm telling you.
Noam Chomsky, the linguist, is of the opinion that language exists as a form of brain print.
I'm thinking, this is the best party I've ever been to in my life, man.
The Western man thinks that the real changes take place up here in his noodle.
I'm sitting here, I'm doing everything I love to do in the whole world, man.
To put into a note to her, beautiful Marchioness, you're lovely.
He doesn't comment on it.
I mean, I'm sitting with a babe.
I find Captain Hegel painful and barren and sterile.
I'm watching TV.
We're all vulnerable to the Americans, and they're a very attractive and wonderful people, and I think we could easily become merged in their lives, as we intend to be anyway.
This is a part of the big flood of immigration to the USA.
War and the Republicans are facing it right now is the central issue is globalization and its implications.
Boutiques going up everywhere, franchises.
Give them to the ignorant.
No one would dream of taking television seriously when I was in college.
Part of the big flood of immigration to the USA.
And neither party, as it stands,
How do you order it?
has a coherent answer to that.
For your date?
No, for my fish-only cooking podcast, Ahi with Ali.
Adam Curry is one of the guys that invented podcasting.
Every author had to inscribe every one of his words on stone, and were allowed 12 words a year. The levels of writing would go up.
You know, don't you tell us haven't I told you, every penny has a tail, and that's the heel the shield is.
Now, this is a non-literate speech.
Well, does that mean that in order to lessen their fears, we attempt to paralyze different immigrant groups coming in at the state of their arrival?
And keep their cultures intact and separate. That is what the meaning of the multicultural mosaic. The mosaic is static. It isn't in a state of constant inter-animation or interplay. No, it's static. And that's exactly the way the French want to remain. They want to remain just the way they are. And so it's not that easy. So it's an amazing, as I say, ploy developed to make this possible. I don't know if it will work, but I certainly don't wish them ill on this maneuver. It is a kind of media ecology, you see. It's a way of using our available resources in the communication to keep people apart and to keep them intact without merging. So I think it's a drastic move. I never heard of it occurring in any other country, did you? I never heard of a multicultural mosaic as an idea for immigration. It's an amazing strategy of survival. Survival, however, is a legitimate goal in life. Under electric media, you just have a world tribe.
The human family is the only remaining tribe.
Especially in a fast-changing world.
One effect of the new movement electronically around the world on the internet is that it makes every nation multicultural.
And this will delight you, Norman. Probably to be ruled eventually by Pat.
I asked you.
A little gasp went round the circle. Ooh! However...
Aha, said the pseudo-duke.
What is our most cherished right since pioneer days?
He laughed.
Paulson.
The Gutenberg technology scrapped medieval culture and retrieved antiquity.
With the advent of electric information pickup, the entire world has been dumped in the Western lap as our baby.
Every nation in the world is now filled with people from everywhere around the world.
Who stand back and just analyze instead of experiencing.
How do you order it?
The present is only faced in any generation by the artist.
Last night on the Smothers Brothers, remember Pat Paulson was asked if he were going to run for president. He said, no. Didn't you once on an ABC program say you were going to run for president? No.
On an educational basis.
You can see that as far as a newspaper is concerned...
If I ask who owns this newspaper, who owns the Washington Post, who are the people who get something out of this, then you begin to moralize. If you began to ask the question, who owns the Washington Post?
Yeah, but why do you want to moralize? I mean, at that level.
Because I'm interested in studying structures. And moralizing is not structural.
I know that. Okay. I know that.
Well, that's it.
But then...
What was that sound?
Johnny Cage's remark.
No, he's sure that it's tied to something. In the native society, every single thing in the society is related. Every plant. It's the incapacity of the visual man to relate to an acoustic world.
I live in a perpetual disagreement with my public. Yes. And moralizing is not structural.
I know that.
Okay.
I know that.
Well, that's it.
But then, therefore, some people are justified in saying that by saying nothing about who owns the media, you are condoning.
A great many people have spent their lives doing these things, moralizing and revealing the skullduggery behind the ownership. This has been done a great deal. The study of the form itself has not been studied by anybody.
Okay.
So I'm doing things that have not been done.
Okay, I'm not.
I'm perfectly capable of moralizing.
I'm an investigator. I explore, and instead of explaining, I explore.
So they said, well, wait and watch this. So they played an ABC program in which he definitely announced he was going to run for president. And they said, well, what do you got to say to that? He said, I've been misquoted. That's a media joke, and I hope you're collecting an awful lot of them.
Electric technology scrapped 19th century hardware and industry and retrieved primitive societies en masse and dumped them in the Western lap. So the kids today are primitives, without identity. The hippie crowd, the young generation is all third world thinking. They don't belong to the first world anymore. Without the old-fashioned private identity, they're tribal.
Electronically. Equally, every culture becomes multinational. We are all nomads, we are all wandering around the universe, and we are all in a state of desperate need for identity.
I find chanting Hegel painful and barren.
For more than 40 years, I have been speaking prose without knowing anything about it. And I am much obliged to you for having taught me that. I would like then...
The absolute verbal diarrhea of those people has covered Europe a mile deep with ordure. I think it's an absolute disaster for Europe, those people. And we're very lucky the pragmatism of the English tradition would have nothing to do with chanting Hegel.
Heinz!
Preparing them for the stage all the time.
Dennis has something on
That's what I think a lot
Bloody
of
Heinz
Oh, no, they're complaining about my disjointedness.
No, not all of them. Some of them actually accept the disjointedness.
Harold Innes' work some 25 years ago at the University of Toronto.
Oral tradition emphasized memory and training. We have no history of conversation or of the oral tradition except as they are revealed darkly through the written or the printed word. The drama reflected the power of the oral tradition, but its flowering for only a short period in Greece and in England and illustrates its difficulties. The oral tradition soon phased itself out. Minerva's Owl is the opening essay, and that, means...
I don't know whether they use that
But they never illustrate. I wish when people make charges, they ought to quote.
They don't want amateur.
I'm eating clam dip with a ripple potato chip.
For example, a small child...
Well, when I get up out of town and go to bed, I will be glad to go home and enjoy the rest of my life.
Some of these shows...
You think this is a game?
It's usually for the first time that you've ever heard of it. Minerva's Owl is wisdom only comes out in the dark, when everything is dark.
At least there's one thing that you'll accept.
If Hegelians were a little more intelligent, I might accept even more. But now in the Renaissance, what was that sound?
Johnny Cage's remark a couple of nights ago. Did you?
And I took with me the galley forms.
Polonius walked up to Hamlet and said, "What are you reading, my lord?" "Words, words, words," says Hamlet. On the printed page, all you see are words, words, words. You don't hear them. Hamlet.
Every once in a while, I have one that I laugh my head. I wake up laughing.
Such as what you...
Oh, well, no, this will take time. No.
This isn't going to make sense. And the horizontal thing worked the same way as the vertical thing.
Won't work. And you cannot translate into it. It's only the phonetic alphabet. We only have, I think, in his own handwriting, I think there are only 2 signatures of Shakespeare's.
We would teach our children in our schools how to protect themselves against media fallout and advertising fallout.
Take that over and over.
It's simply fantastic, the unconsciousness of our Western world.
I can remember a few. I once spent a whole evening with Shakespeare, and I pestered him. I wanted him to write down something for me on a piece of paper just so I could take it back with me.
My life.
Learns by hearing his tongue, not by looking at the language. And having heard a few scraps of English repeated in different situations around the home or around the community, he fills in the rest of the gaps resonantly very quickly.
That's very good, actually.
Well, it's also...
I mean, it's interesting to me that he was going to write I Doubt They For I Am.
Oh, yeah, that was his... well, you see, this doubt was in the center of his philosophy, the cognition doubt.
Absolutely. The key to his knowledge.
I'm smoking joints, I'm snorting coke, I'm drinking shots of Jack Daniels, I'm chasing them with glasses of champagne mixed with Heineken. I'm sitting there, man. I'm thinking to myself...
This is the only culture in the history of the world.
This is civilized. You know what I mean? This is nice. It doesn't get any better than this, man.
Linus Pauling, Heisenberg, and others is interval resonance. And any rumor, no matter how crazy, has an effect, an instant effect, which can never be cancelled. And the effect is independent of any truth or falsehood. Is concerned with this sailor who is caught in the vortex of the big whirlpool. Story at Berkeley. A few months ago, he was addressing a women's lib group. And this program is related to that. Liberation. Women's lib is an extreme form of violence. And upset. Maybe to you. Entirely related to television. Begins to study the way it works. And he sees that some things go down and disappear and some things pop up again.
Oh, we gather at the river, the beautiful river.
Something that I understand.
I mean, you can't. What else could you want?
Peculiarity of print.
George Bush wishes he was doing this right now, man.
One of the, in PR terms, one of the major changes has come into the world with the electronic environment as a total surround.
Many meanings.
Audience becomes workforce.
And I am a professor of literature full-time. I defend it right and left and center at all times. I consider it as the only origin of civilization and the only cause of civilization.
Yes. We shall gather at the river, like the flow.
If business is to survive.
And I got bummed out.
The only culture in the history of the world that ever tried to change everybody into itself. And it's called civilization.
I make the discoveries.
There's a book by Thomas Kuhn called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions.
And it resulted from only one alphabet in the world. There are not two alphabets. There is only one alphabet that creates civilization, and that's the phonetic alphabet.
In which he observes scientists have, as he points out, through 2,500 years of Western history, tended to oppose all scientific discovery whenever it has been made.
Diverse interpretation of socio, because
you can see that a tribal society is not open. The Hebrew alphabet does not do this. The Arabic alphabet does not do this. The Chinese and Japanese letters or ideograms do not create literacy in any sense at all. You can't get in. There's no way in. You are not allowed in.
People don't like anything new, anything that requires adjustment.
Literacy consists in separating the eye from the other senses. So what is happening to our own children is we're watching them become third world.
A woman on a beach, looking up quite fondly at a man in a swimsuit standing over her, and he was handing her a Coke. And McLuhan said,
he can disapprove of every moment, but he goes on listening. Creating Euclidean space and creating all the illusions of rationality and uniformity and the continuum of existence.
Form of newspaper.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that they feel much more groupy and trendy than they do private or goal-oriented. The world of visual space is in the left hemisphere, the sequential, continuous, connected one. The world of acoustic, primitive, third world space is in the right hemisphere. It's a world of the simultaneous.
He knows what's going on.
He knows that it's an abomination.
As may well be.
But I mean to say, as we do when we're subjected to advertising.
You have to stop trying to connect anything with anything anymore.
For example, you can get, well, again, we might disagree on open and close, you see, because I call the ear closed and the eye open. But some people turn it around the other way. It doesn't matter. As long as they're both there, that's what matters.
Yeah. What do you call the ear closed and the...
Because it's total. It's like a tribal society is closed.
Because in Einstein's world, everything happens at once.
Coke sucker. And the whole group froze.
It has to get into
information is new because when things move at very high speeds, then everybody can begin to understand for the first time in the world what gives. Familiarity breeds consensus. It teaches you how to see and feel and know yourself. The ultimate form of propaganda is the mother tongue.
Sort of thing. And of course, that's exactly what it was. He hadn't made that up.
So here are the two leading exponents of the new scene, Edie Sedgwick and Andy Warhol.
Then something happened, which is where let's pull it all into this platform where you can make decisions whether to monetize it or take it down.
Included in a new culture of software, information, or electric simultaneity, which the computer people call software. Yep. And this is a world where there is not one bureaucracy in the world today that is functioning.
Has meaning. ABC, the ABC, he knows his ABCs is a meaningful statement. See, they were phonemes.
And you had to have two or three next to one.
Well, no, but the point is that when you use phonemes, you translate the acoustic into the visual. Everybody is equal before that written law. That is civilization, the kivus. The kivus.
Yeah.
Now this idea of the kivus does not exist except in the phonetic alphabet. It has never existed in any part of the world, any time, without the phonetic alphabet. But it is visual. Now the visual sense is homogeneous. It reduces everything to the same form. This is what we call modern science. It's all visual.
In other words, like what you're saying is that republic and democracy are totally a visual thing.
Totally from the phonetic alphabet, and will disappear very quickly with the electricity. The electric thing is wiping out all our values.
Well, are we going back to monarchy or?
No, back to tribal chieftains. The occult becomes a servo mechanism.
They would practically live in a world of ESP. When your whole sensorium is in action, you don't...
But we now live electrically in a non-Euclidean world. The Euclid has been phased out because the eye has gone back into the rest of the sensorium.
The holistic and the world of gestalt and figure ground and pattern recognition. The artist, the enema of society.
But at the same time, I don't think anybody is saved enormously just by giving themselves over to an experience completely unknown.
Last night on Osvaldo Brothers.
Only now we have news fit to the internet and news fit to television and news fit to radio.
Spectrum wat online wagenwijd open staat.
The media fit the battle.
Voor iedereen met een idee en een droom. En blijf deuren open houden voor dames. Dankjewel.
Helix culpa.
It was really phonetically in which you were able to put into these meaningless forms the...
Marshall McLuhan, what are you doing?
I got an A-Town legend in this thing. Big Gil, what's good with it, my dog?
We cut words off and know what he's talking about, but most other rappers, man, it's like, man, we can't get away from how we speak, so...
Henry, you and Marshall McLuhan are really weird.
What other aspects of the team are there?
Well, it is basically dialogue carried out into the non-verbal area, isn't it?
Are they in the non-verbal area?
Well, into post-action.
Post-action.
Yes.
Your phrase. How would your definition contrast with Jung's?
I once saw Jung being interviewed on film.
My Mac has been acting up like a motherfucker.
Okay.
Her grandchild, Felix Culpa. As you know, the voting age used to be 18. It will be 3 in your time. 3 years of age is sufficient now to mature the person and to give him a proper quality of senile grooviness. Homework could then be put down visually.
They in the north because they came from the south.
The word groovy used to mean new, as you know now. It means settled in well-established patterns.
Running from the bullshit that we were going through down here, you know what I'm saying?
I was interested, you see, in the fact that you were a Southerner.
Oh my God, the public urination, and you know, it's not just on St. Patrick's Day.
Really? Without an oral tradition of corporate public address, this kind of music would not occur.
I'm sure a lot of it also has to do with preaching.
Is it private? TV makes possible talk shows.
How will right now be transmitted later?
Oh, you weren't. I thought there was lightning in my house.
Today, the ordinary child of 3 or 4 knows more about the world than Methuselah ever knew. He's been around the planet over and over and watching TV.
A lot of immigration to the USA.
He's so thoughtful and serious.
No, grim. The whole culture as teaching machine. Of identity with an assembly line. The ad will become a substitute for the product, and all the satisfactions will be derived informationally from the ad, and the product will be merely a number in some file. This is a world classic.
The world by the age of 3 that they're in a sense senile.
As you know, the voting age used to be 18. It will be 3 in your time.
They have acquired so much information about the world by the age of 3 that they're in a sense senile.
You see, one's international, one's domestic.
Well, we could go back to the techniques used by Joyce and Finnegans Wake.
This is a world where... Because it only means what it means to you. Where advertising is heading.
The ancillary market resulting from indexing context.
When he takes
indexing context within content, specifically video, will create a for any company wanting to be present within any of the context indexed.
It meant some ways an improvement on our nervous system.
typically cliches like though he might have been more humble. There's no police like almost.
Electronically, obviously, he's taken it to another level.
Now that's what I was interested in. I mean, how many thoughts can you cram in your head?
It isn't a question of how many thoughts. The fact is that when you confront the page at that speed, you apprehend it as a Xerox.
I wish Neil Postman or Marshall McLuhan were still alive and we could time travel and get their perspective.
Is that the
George McGovern and Jimmy Carter
audience becomes workforce. TV is good for that, and same with ads. Even the railway train brought in a mobility that ended the old family patterns. If the audience can become involved in the actual process of making, in which, many of the best talents of our whole society, well-adjusted, respectable people, making the ad, then it's happy. Do you know that...
These days I just stay in.
Young and easily frightened. The old clothes are what is seen. You do not any longer bring a toxicist in or a top engineer in to tackle a particular problem in mechanics. You bring in people from biology and psychology. You bring them in from all over the mess.
Period.
A tribal grouping of human beings by electronic speed has taken over the corporate family from the little nuclear family.
No, these days I just stay in and read Amazon reviews.
Most people read ads about things they already own.
Of things I already own?
So the kids today no longer feel limited to their little private families. They now feel part of a very much larger family.
Going too far.
Since most of the effects, they don't read things to buy them,
I think I'm just looking for a sense of community.
but to feel reassured that they have already bought the right thing.
I'm like, I wonder who else out there is mad about my blender.
And I think they would find that if they tackled the problem, they would quickly begin to write the way I write. Harold Innis has the same problem.
Yeah.
His sentences are totally discontinuous.
Yeah.
Each one is a kind of little book in itself. And anybody who tries to read Harold Innis continuously goes mad. And because he wants you to use each of his sentences as a kind of world.
Yeah.
Not as a continuum. Not something in a continuum.
But do you mean it totally seriously when you say that your books can be opened at any page?
Any page, anywhere, yes.
So as McLuhan says, the audience becomes a workforce. So we have a resonance between the stimuli that people hear, or the sound or the words that people hear, and the stored material in their minds.
Storehouse in their mind, then she'll cast them, then play it back again.
The stored material in their minds.
Then she'll cast it, then she'll address, and then just say.
Will be characterized quickly and the fix will be obvious to someone.
The person that would know where to buy this dress would be the person that would collect a point or a commission.
So as McLuhan says, the audience becomes a workforce.
I make the discoveries.
Is that the audience becomes workforce.
For 20 years, scores of politicians have made the pilgrimage to this windowless sanctuary of sound in Midtown Manhattan. Here, Tony Schwartz has created some of the most effective commercials for Lyndon Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, George McGovern, and Jimmy Carter. George McGovern and Jimmy Carter.
Audience becomes workforce.
West 56th Street.
455 West 56.
Yeah.
All times present.
The subliminal numbers.
I was a network administrator for the NSA.
I don't see any difference between voluntary and involuntary.
I spy with life a lot. The activities a woman is supposed to accomplish quite quickly in life, very much more sophisticated. Her muscle coordination is much more sophisticated than that of a boy.
Any woman.
What will men be doing?
The gate was originally known as the Watergate.
Still keeping each other under surveillance.
Traitor's Gate.
As far as everyday life is concerned.
Boys are thrown off very much more easily than girls.
And people now go out.
Ashley Montague has a book called The Natural Superiority of Women, meaning...
Whereas the old environment was mainly based on the wheel.
Peers.
Women, physiologically, are superior to men. That is, they are better set up for survival.
That is, the young people do.
They're less special.
The kids do.
We spy by eye. That's what a spy means. And espionage means using the eye. Something that begins with S, and then your job is guess what I spy. But no, the Western man is a visual spy. And he prides himself on the private eye. So our detectives are called private eyes. It would be meaningless to a Russian, a private eye. My gosh.
But because they're all public, but they do the same job.
No, but they don't use the eye. They listen.
Prior to that, I was an analyst. Before that, I ran tech support for Microsoft Word.
The gap between the kid and the politician is...
They know exactly how many almonds that each one of us is eating.
On the other hand, with Xerox, you have the complete flip of Gutenberg. With Xerox, everybody becomes publisher, not reader, but publisher. Anybody can publish anything. You can publish a letter or a poem or anything, or the Pentagon Papers. Any office boy can publish the Pentagon Papers because it's the office boys who do the Xeroxing, and all the office boys have access to top secret documents. So Xerox, the electric thing, is a complete revolution, and it's away from the eye.
Get real, will you? You and I are both like guys that had this rich neighbor, Xerox, that left the door open all the time, and you go sneak in and steal a TV set.
It's all back to
You see, here's one of the problems about Watergate, isn't it? I think related to things that have nothing to do with Watergate at all.
You know there's an old saying in the business world, if it works, it's obsolete.
The lucky is not uncovering what you're doing at home.
Early, I worked in various capacities in KFC and Topeka.
Came in with Hollywood. It began with the assembly line of the 19th century. It reached its peak with Hollywood. It's the space of the interval. When you touch something, you create an interval, not a connection. And if there were any connection between your finger and what you touch, you wouldn't have a finger. So it's interval and it's resonant. The resonant interval is touch.
Had to have a big interval between them because interval is
and pattern becomes
on the horizon. He put a little bit of reindeer. We now live inside our own nervous system.
Terrible situation, and Dorothy's the only one.
Just how you got from laundry to education, I don't quite follow.
The telegraph extends our nervous system.
The storyline or connected spaces are not there.
This will delight you, Norman. The artistic view, therefore, of the world becomes a normal view for all members of society.
The world we ignore, and therefore everything I said. Therefore, all media, not just the newspaper, uses bad news as a way of selling ads. All news is fake. It's pseudo-event. It's created by the medium that is employed.
Colossal fiction.
There is no honest reporting.
The word fake, actually, and the word fact are the same word. They both come from Latin facio, meaning to make.
On any medium, it is all fake, necessarily created by the medium in question. Well, that's not true. It has to be. No, you can't. Newspaper news has nothing to do with TV news. Now, art crashes through. The entire world perceived as junk heap. The junk world is the world of the artist. He sets about creating order out of junk.
Excuse me, I am lost. Please help me.
对不起，我迷了路，请你帮忙。
Men have been exploiting us for too long, and the real world pouring off those images.
I'm right in this, Philip. It would not especially preoccupy a radio audience or a movie audience. World of the idea of using a movie or a radio program as a way of achieving personal perpetuity of fame is a rather doubtful procedure.
Or of having this need for perpetuity of fame in the future induced into you by watching such media.
That's true.
Is there gold on this property, and if so, where? It's 77 submissions. They come from around the world. Techniques he's never heard of. Mathematicians, computer scientists. He gives out the $500,000 in prize money. Joyce, he views the world as his geology department.
Use the mass audience and give them the problem and not the answers.
Has 10 thunders in Finnegans Wake. Each one is a major human technology. Each episode in the book is the explaining in detail of all these events that take place because of that new technology in society.
It is a lanky one. Well, let us begin our electric environment.
Whether Macy or somebody else sells the toy doesn't make any difference.
Pero ayudar como, o sea, nosotros lo que hacemos es solo ayudarlos a que tengan más clientes, solo por.
Yes, I know just what you want. We don't carry that brand, but I think Gimbals does. Let me see. Yes, here it is. I thought I noticed it before.
Me da mucha ternura. ¿Por qué tiene que haber una competencia entre las marcas?
Now we'll take some at my store.
Just a minute. I have something I'd like to give our friend here. This is just a little something to show my appreciation for all you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Macy. I didn't think you were that generous.
Oh, I don't think that's going to be enough. I'd better give you some...
I'll make up the difference.
Buy it through the store and get 10% discount.
I can get it for cost.
Terminé acá, pero fue por una buena causa. King.
Dialogue.
Finnegans Wake. You haven't seen my son's essay on this.
1,000 magazine articles.
See, or somebody else sells the toy, doesn't make any difference. Don't you feel that way?
Huh? Oh, me? Oh, yeah, sure.
I wonder who else out there is mad about my blender.
Speeds all the bridgewares and railways. But you can get into a civilized society.
In other words, they get huge information satisfaction from ads, far more than they do from the product itself.
A reader, rapid guessing.
Like, yeah, this guy Rick
is
right.
Because the speed of information. Very profound sociological treatise. It would take volumes to elucidate it.
I remember my dad spanking me, and I remember working at Rumors Comedy Club in Winnipeg.
Oral people don't have a written form imposed on them. Look, this guy doesn't know what I'm talking about.
I ask you, what is our most cherished right since pioneer days?
This is an experiment. It's never happened before.
Irving.
Right? Like, for example, these marches that just happened. Okay, the women were exhilarated. They were almost hysterical.
Speech one. Innumerable confusion.
I don't think you can quite get away with that phrase. Innumerable suggests numbers. Confusion is singular. I don't know. Do you like the phrase innumerable confusion?
Innumerable confusion. It's part of it.
It's part of what?
It's part of the confusion.
You're miming.
Miming of the message.
Still. Innumerable confusion.
Writing and understanding for the first time of the creative process.
Organizing field of knowledge from multiple points of view. Is
Organizing amateurs.
Amateur field versus the specialist viewpoint on profit.
Has Drucker written about this?
Now that he's a billionaire.
By open. There are 33,000 new titles per annum in the UK.
Would you just a minute remind me what OHMS is?
It's electric unit. But it's also one of His Majesty's service. When constabulary is to be done, a policeman's love is not a happy one.
The museum.
All that to write the truth and all that. Nobody has time to read more than a few dozen books. Sort of stuff per annum. Wrap himself in the first. So what about all these new titles? The amendment when somebody. What's the meaning? Threatens them a little bit. Everybody begins to get very annoyed. Get out,
I think it was Susan Sontag on the occasion in which she said that that white people are the cancer of the human race. That was, and Marshall's comment to that was, well, he said, moral indignation is a standard strategy for endowing the idiot with dignity.
Sir, I want to show everybody.
Stop, don't
That's not smart. That's not good promotion, right?
It is for everybody.
That's not for everybody.
Yeah, but how do they know?
Whoever you are watching this, you probably won't.
It's the enemy. Oh yeah, this is something we didn't bring up. Whenever a new technology comes in, it's the old one that is seen as the enemy. The new one is invisible. So you go out and destroy the old one. After day. The kids don't see that their enemy that is destroying them is the new electronic technology. They think it's the damned old hardware, the school system. Don Quixote, when he got a real dose of Gutenberg romances,
rushed out, got on his armor, and dashed off into the Middle Ages to destroy windmills. And do you need any better example? Rear view vision. Wow.
Holmes, the great sleuth, is...
And
I see what you mean.
An open society is the civilized world is open, and whereas the tribal is absolutely closed. Now this is the opposite of what a lot of people think.
Right. Well, that would explain for you.
By immigration, you can get into Canada, but you cannot get into an African tribe.
No.
By immigration. Alphabet created individualism. It created armies, empires, huge organizations. The country is falling apart. Which became a type of intelligence test. The writing age was essentially an egoistic age. A wonderful world. It created civilization. It was a wonderful world.
It created civilization in our sense.
A simplified and flexible alphabet and the spread of writing and reading emphasized logic and consequently general agreement. It's a bias of communication.
You're pulling from ancestors, spirit, energy.
I think it's the only thing that contributed anything to stuff. Well, no. I think
a few talent contests. My name rung around Yonkers.
There aren't very many examples of people elongating the vowel of
the word before, which becomes a whole entity of creation itself within one line.
hold me, love me. Elizabethan.
Ben Crystal, actor, Shakespearean.
I asked for vodka.
In London.
No, a wasp needs an awful lot of booze in order to be human.
You're an extension of the community.
It's comical, of course. We have bypassed the literate world of hardware, left hemisphere technology, by moving once more again into the altogether world, the holistic world, the right hemisphere, the third world people. Pattern recognition. Social effort. Zeus, who says to his fellow god, Narcissus, watch yourself.
Yeah.
There are lots of things better than civilization, but if you like civilization, that's the end of it. Civilization is a technical term based upon the dominance of the eye over the other senses. Or with something approaching assembly line. We live in an electric age which is non-visual and non-visualizable. There will be no civilization of any kind whatever in 10 years. Called civilization. But the abacus is not. Paddling a canoe, you become a servant of the canoe. The genre of what we call the genre of literature began in the spells cast by witch doctors. The shamans. Awareness of the thing.
The concept is valid no matter where it originates.
And this, I think, is where the light shows could come in as fast methods of orientating.
Oh, I think that's fascinating. I think that would be very desirable.
I have no proof it was false data. I have no proof it was correct data.
Yeah, always. The user is always a corrupter. He will change.
Like the translator is always a traitor.
Traditor, yes.
What year is it?
Obsolescence does not mean the conclusion, but rather the beginning of the process. Out of its tribal dream, right?
But most of the gender stuff would be left out of the room. Okay, if you had a real mother in there who had experienced childbirth and was raising voice.
Level educational possibilities are outside the schoolroom. You see, when you're dealing with signs that are meaningless, you can take anything
Anything that undermines the phonetic alphabet and its dominance and its power of releasing the I as the dominant organ ends civilization.
Clothing around anybody.
When the separation of meaning
from
the visual came into play, it clicked Western man wide open. For the first time in history, the visual part of man came alive in isolation from the rest of man.
How?
Well, he wanted to play marbles. He had the job on the steam engine of pulling the string. You see, small children have made some of the greatest discoveries. The most famous discovery in our time, the automatic governor on the steam engine, from which we have the word cybernetics, was made by an 8-year-old child.
How?
Well, I mean the big discoveries. Not some little ones in our time, but the very few discoveries are ever made when people are looking for
visual space and literacy and scriptural religion. NASA, a bunch of highly endowed modern physicists, are totally under the domination of Gutenberg without knowing it. They think space is visual. Yeah. They think space is something out there.
Weren't you the first one to urinate on the moon? I was reading. Yes, that's right.
Well, how about the old Russian who went up in the satellite and came back and said, "Hey boys, God isn't up here. I just toured the neighborhood and didn't find him."
You remember when the American got out of the satellite for the first time, the Russians laughed. They said, "We put the John inside from the first."
It's not simple, is it? It's not all one thing or another thing. There may be means eventually of an orchestration of these faculties, an orchestration of media, so that they will not batter each other to bits and batter us to bits. The normal human condition. Television. The hunter learns by alerting every sense and training his perceptual life. And instead of putting something...
It's a rather luminous phrase, or nourishal.
1939.
The New York painters for the past 30 years have been painting aesthetic theories. They have not been painting things. But then he didn't make the further observation that the aesthetic theories have become things, words. And so the word is that which primitive man paints. Primitive man is not interested in objects in the outer world because there is no outer world for the primitive man. And so he paints words, which are to him things, and he says, if stone were not stone, how would I know stone? It's as simple as that. The word rabbit is rabbit, otherwise how would I know rabbit? The name McLuhan is probably rather opaque, but the name Marshall is less opaque. Advertising fallen.
We don't understand information movement and image making as warfare at all. We call this advertising.
It is a rather luminous phrase, or maréchal.
A maréchal is a marshal, a war marshal.
All your clothes are always nice. Is that true?
No, but sometimes.
It's really great, and I loved reading your introduction. That's as far as I've gotten so far. I believe the introduction is an excerpt from the book.
You'll find that you get a very strong structural image of the book on those 2 pages.
And it is interesting because today is my mother's 100th birthday.
I have a very handsome son who's coming down in a few days. I want to introduce you. I think she was impressed by my wardrobe, which was extensive more than anything else at that time. However, she had taken a little house so that she could be with Marshall, not having seen him for how many years? 2 years while you were away at Cambridge. And during that summer, she invited me over to spend the night, to spend the weekend a number of times, and generally sort of promoted our togetherness.
The newlyweds had their honeymoon in pre-war Italy.
Venice, which we hit in high season, with a full moon, the gondoliers in with wide sizes and singing arias at the top of their voices, most of them beautiful, and the women in evening clothes.
I have a memory for page numbers. It's funny.
You do?
Yeah.
It's the Kensington numbers.
That could be.
Do you know your famous quote? You want the essence of a book, read page 69 or 98.
Oh no, 96. 69 is 96, and they're complimentary, you see. 69, 96.
Now, she passed away 4 years ago, a week shy of her 96th birthday. My dad, of course, passed away at 69.
69 is 96, and they're complimentary, you see.
1980. So, she was very, very, very long-lived, and my God, she would have loved to have been here tonight.
To criticize the critic, what Eliot makes this remark.
So one of your books,
I wrote it in that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. I wonder where to criticize, and here it is.
Orion of the Orgius, Mirshal McLuhan, Yips Dadden, product of the extremes, giving quotidians to our means. Mirshal McLuhan, the Yipsy Dadden, product of the extremes, giving quotidians to our means.
The Newfoundlander said,
recognized around the world,
I'm a rancher,
but not at home.
I have 40 acres in Newfoundland, and I grow a great variety of things there. And he said then in turn, what do you do?
About happiness or about the childhood and so on.
Follow the crumble. To criticize the critic, page 54.
I counted last maybe.
Page 54, that evolution is no longer in the world of nature, but now in the world of technology.
And what the form of media does
It always was. If one takes technology as an extension of man, what you do.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's easy to see that once you've done all this work. It's as simple as that. They're not signs for things at all.
To program the environment itself as evolutionary. Finnegans Wake is the greatest guide to the media.
1939.
Guide to the media ever devised on this planet, and is a tremendous study of the action of all media upon the human psyche and sensorium. But it's difficult to read. But it's worth it. Now, as we move our evolutionary process out into the environment itself...
Erewhon, nowhere. Which means utopia, means nowhere.
What's that got to do with narcissism?
Well, it had to. He has a theory about, by the way, there is one side of the brain which is able to perform.
California, now they're after the anti-consumer, the non-consumer. He's the real threat, and they've caught a few of them.
Butler has a wonderful satire called Erewhon. It means nowhere. With non-gestalt, abstract figure minus ground. And that is called the ranch. Individualist self-investigation, though, became positive literary pastime. Positive literary pastime. By the way, prose is not just ordinary talk at all. Ordinary talk is not prose, for heaven's sake.
Maybe a necessary consequence.
What you're recording there is not prose. Finnegans Wake is a drama, it's a play. And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
And now this is becoming generally available to all the public. The whole public gets conditioned to that sort of thing.
The popular technology
Present.
But they were not explicit about it.
Poets are always very conscious of the problems of their public. Now, in the case of Dante, it's all in his letter to Count Grandi. And you see, he was writing in the vernacular for the first time. As a serious poet writing in the vernacular, this is unheard of. All serious poetry is written in Latin.
Yeah.
Confusion of an extreme kind is the normal human condition.
Does television have an aesthetic?
And if so, what are some of the recognizable parameters?
TV Guide.
The movie became an art form as soon as television went around it. The railway became an art form as soon as the motor car went around.
The spaceships taught us a great deal about how to program the total environment. On the other hand, the spaceships taught us to look at Earth as an art form. Looking back at Earth from outer space transformed the planet into an art form. Back to storyline for a moment. Aristotle's famous remark in the Poetics about plots.
In Russia, everything is forbidden, even what's permitted.
Even when permitted.
And in America, everything is permitted except the knowledge that everything is permitted.
No.
It's very rhythmic and melodic way of speaking.
I have been collecting phrases from the different languages to mean Aristotle's famous remark in the Poetics about plots. And his remark, for example, that of all plots, the episodic are the worst.
Because I understand it.
I know it like the back of my hand. You know, I know something thoroughly with utmost familiarity. In Spanish, there's the most wonderful phrase. I don't know what it is in Spanish. I know the English translation. It is, I know it as if I'd given birth to it.
The movie became an art form as soon as television went around.
Oh, it wasn't a fish. Because I understand it.
Finnegans Wake is a drama. It's a play. And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
As a world environment.
The old song about he had whiskers on his chin again, long came the wind and blew them in again, poor Michael Finnegan, begin again.
Art is anything you can get away with. Look at the cover of June 8 TV Guide. Dali picture of what TV really is. 2 thumbnails. Now, the interval between the two is the all-important thing. Touch is integral. No connection in touch.
And tactile space is very much in attention in the electric age, because the audile and the tactile are very close. Tactile space is the title itself is one of these rubbings of cliches together. Finn, the Finn cycle, the Finn again, and Finnegan.
Thanks for choosing McLuhan Unclaimed. I'm Winnipeg. Your selection will proceed right after this message. The following is formal satire. It's completely made up and does not exist in real life. It's everyone's favorite quarterly time of the year, the Netflix 96-hour chill-out tour. Another chance for you to chill out with your favorite Netflix performers, past, present, and future. At the only multi-locational global bricolage on Earth. All the partners you've grown to expect and some new ones will provide 96 straight hours of Netflix innovation at your local movie theaters all day, all night, for 96 hours. Your Chill Out app automatically enters you in the usual contests for production memorabilia, what you call swag, a chance to have your question asked, and of course, 27 lucky winners will receive 1 year of free Netflix upon check-in.
This could be anywhere in Winnipeg by the Assiniboine or the Red River.
I see.
What's wrong with the world? Yes. Handed to me on a Winnipeg Street by Tom Easterby.
How did you get on with the English? Then that is definitely a positive point in favor of them.
So he was, Mr. Jingle wrote all his prose in telegrams. And that's way back in 1835-40. Dickens' character Jingle spoke all his prose in telegraphese. Telegraph term, popping cork. Mr. Jingle.
Improve their moral lives or their physical or social lives.
Of the mass media.
Well, again, you're making a value judgment. I'm not making any judgments about the mass media. I say, if you want to solve these problems.
The automata of the electric age. The software age is simply doing the bidding of the zeitgeist, the new environment.
And he turned to the chairman and he said, obedient little bitches, aren't they?
One off circuit. I think twisting is itself a kind of untwisting of the daily task.
The guy on the Susquehanna show, everybody.
Everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, the medium is the message. It's one of the most useful remarks I think that have been uttered in the 20th century.
I would mostly call this Osborne Village. Yeah. Ever heard of the phrase the global village? Yes.
When I say that the future of the future is the present, I'd call that a headline, and it's an icon. You can see that, as far as a newspaper is concerned, that
salad. I'm doing this. I love to cook.
If you say the medium is the mass age or the massage, that's a headline. It's an icon. It's a mess.
Terrified. Well-to-do nobodies.
No, jeans are a costume. They're a tribal costume.
Being merged in the American culture.
The UK, do they have Halloween? I don't think they do. I don't know that they do.
It's a mess. Age, hyphenate.
Everywhere. Suddenly he was a...
Marshall McLuhan, what are you doing? Lately I've been worrying about Phyllis Diller.
The crazy adventures.
But you think really there's that many dumb people?
I think there are very, very, very few intelligent people.
You get me Mr. Moynihan, he's either at the UN or at Harvard.
I mean, how could Daniel Ellsberg have, he spent several nights at Rand Corporation copying.
Dr. Moynihan, please, sir.
He could never copy them by hand.
Hello?
Good morning, Mr. President.
Where are you?
I'm in New York writing a speech.
Have you got a minute or is it bad time?
I do, sir.
In fact, I'm writing a speech and I'm delivering tonight at 7:30, so
we're going to hit
we're right in the middle of it, but it's brief so you can listen.
It may well be.
And the huge clash in these.
Dagwood is very, very weak. Dagwood. Blondie is the power.
Are causing a very serious dilemma between our claim to privacy and the community's need to know.
14 minutes. Is your retention time that long?
I never...
Don't admit it.
Kierkegaard is a man of great relevance for this time. Man of the inner trip, the inner dialogue, the inner encounter. He seemed to understand intuitively the folding back of energies into this inner process. He has a wonderful quote. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And much involvement in everybody else's life. It's a sort of Ann Landers column writ large. The war is inwards. Words are inward. The war is inward. The real war, the litter war, is not outside there in the street. It's inside people.
There's a breakdown in the trust among our people and the pool of broadcasters from Philadelphia have temporarily lost the audio. It is not a conspiracy against Governor Carter or President Ford, and they will fix it as soon as possible.
This is called Operations Research. There are books on it.
How did you watch the debates? On a number of television sets?
Yes, I saw it on black and white and two different kinds of color. The CBS color and NBC color. They seem to be quite different on the set I was watching.
Well, it might have been the set.
Might have been the set.
And with all its effects, social consequences carefully dramatized.
On the other hand, the glorious moment...
The trust among our people and the...
Finnegans Wake is a drama. It's a play.
The pool of broadcasters
was the rebellion of the medium against the bloody message.
And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
The medium finally rebelled against the most stupid arrangement of any debate in the history of debating.
Why was it stupid? Not from a
scripting point of view.
The satellite worlds put around the globe puts a proscenium arch. The whole of the planet becomes a stage. All the world's a stage now, literally. Shakespeare at the globe said all the world's a stage. We on the globe now see.
Scripting point of view.
All the world's a stage. Way at the back. School, scholia, among other things, meant leisure. Admitted by his own admission, trying to get back in touch with reality. This is the Peter principle. The higher you go in the organization chart, the less competent you become.
This is the news!
And when you achieve the utmost level of incompetence, you are sent to head office.
Is there a development in the evolution of mankind? If we go from advancing technologies to advancing technologies.
From the 3rd century A.D. till the Renaissance, the reason the book survived was Scripture. With Gutenberg, the advent of the book, the church became a book religion. Whereas today, with the advent of a software electric environment, the church is beginning to mistake the new electric environment for the mystical body itself.
Recurring objects and survives.
I'm doing a book called The Second God.
Yeah. Is there any relation to the first one?
Well, you see, I say the first God created man, and he's been trying to make man moral ever since. And man created the second God, and he's trying to make that moral ever since.
By the way, I have one of my basic things lately has been...
In his work, Vigo it was, who was it not, who insisted that every pattern recognition, every technology, every extension of man's powers, every amplification, every technology was literally a god, small g, myth making, fable and myth, and therefore that every fable and myth was an accurate account of the effects on society and psyche of this new god.
Well, isn't to a large extent the Old Testament
I'm looking at a phrase here of Francis Bacon, Lord Bacon. He says, aphorisms representing a knowledge broken do invite men to inquire farther.
I've taken children's recordings and shown that their concept of media is identical with their concept of God.
Anyway,
Look, now that's very important. The discovery that when you're on the telephone...
That is the God that is dead. That is the only one that is being observed. The Newtonian universe, the God who manufactured that universe is dead. That's what Nietzsche meant. See, I was studying the effects of the church in literature, in history, in society.
The discovery that when you're on the telephone or on the air, you don't have a physical body.
Yeah.
When you don't have a physical body, you don't have an identity. When you don't have an identity, you don't have any morals.
Is the old Renaissance book religion versus new software masquerading as mystical body.
So we've lost all, not only goals and objectives, all gone, but our ethics are gone. Now, as the private ethic disappears and private morals disappear, there suddenly comes a strange new need for public morals. This is the tribal. The tribal man demands absolute integrity of the chief, no fooling around. And the kids today don't give a damn about private ethics, but they are very deeply concerned about public ethics. This is pure hypocrisy on their part, but they don't know any better. But the sudden flip, as you permit people anything privately, then suddenly public morals gets awfully tough.
Yeah, but the electric. He's not really threatened by the immigrant.
He blamed the immigrant.
Oh, yes, exactly.
The data is not very strong on that.
So what? If computers can do it better than us, then what's the difference?
Paranoia, though, comes from the phasing out of the American way of life by electricity.
No.
In an electric information environment, minority groups can no longer be contained, ignored. Too many people know too much about each other. Our new environment compels commitment and participation. We have become irrevocably involved with and responsible for each other.
And so that's where we're heading, into a world of tight public morality and total immorality in the private sector, which is tribal. Tribal man doesn't have any private ethic. He has taboos. There are a few taboos, but there's nothing private about them. So from now on, our morality is going to be survival kit, and the tribal chief has to be perfect because their survival demands that. So that's going with that revolution. Then is we mentioned from hardware to software, which is the end of the old industrial age. The big business today is espionage, not making motor cars. The big business today is designing environments, designing huge social service programs that affect everybody. The designing of environments. Since Sputnik, the only thing you can design now is the whole planet.
I believe
Dagwood is very, very weak echo. Don't think you'll find any more panic about communism in North America.
Well, it's receding, but...
No, we've already moved over into communism. The new software environment is sort of tribal communism, isn't it? On a huge scale in North America, in the sense of accepting socialist services in the 20th century.
So I mostly seem to IG story.
Politics have moved completely into show business, and increasingly so since Watergate. It is big show business. Totally. Policies no longer matter because whether your electric light is provided by Republicans or Democrats is rather unimportant. Is rather unimportant compared to the service. Debunking serious things and serious people. Erasmus's praise and following, Rabelais' Gargantua. These are Menippean satires that are debunking serious people. Who? Menippean. That is, I mentioned it earlier, apropos the Dostoevsky book, Bakhtin. Menippean satire includes Lucian, the dialogues of Lucian. It includes the Petronius, the world of funny stories.
Well, except they've become anything but free men.
Well, go on now, you're philosophizing. And so the war is inwards is another way of saying that within our verbal world, our verbal universe, we have created a massive disorder, and transparency is an overlay, which is pure chaos. So the war is inwards. The war is in words. All my poems are on parole. Nice headline. Well, now let's cut.
One more thing which might make Dr. McLuhan slightly more understandable. He is a Texan by marriage. His wife is from Fort Worth. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce...
That's why I wrote a book called Through the Vanishing Point. When you go through the vanishing point, you go into a world of 360 degrees, a total field of action. That's where we live electrically. Itself is one of these rubbings of cliches together. The Finn cycle, the Finnegan, and Finnegan. The night is the world in which the dirty linen of the day gets washed by repetition and scrubbing. It is also the world of the archetype.
And the dream. The dream is closure for.
Whereas the day is the world of the cliche, the visually tied together things.
Right.
And the world of the archetype is the world of the ear, where each item has its own bounds, creates its own conditions.
Creates its own space and so on, This also very important, and this is sort of an implicit metaphor, is the way that Finnegan wakes.
Michael Finnegan. about a generation, at least a generation of warning or notice in advance of technology.
Ignoring the semantics in the dictionaries, going for the resonance, what Eliot called the auditory.
No, but it's well to have
an auditory guy.
I know, but the point is when you are not at a position where you can talk about a particular point, and you want to keep it in mind, well, give him a pencil, give him a pen. And
are we on the air already?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Sure, and this morning we want to talk about tales of stem or stone. Tell me tale of stem or stone.
Tell me, Ellen.
Now,
it's the end of the Olivia episode, isn't
what's
it?
implied in that, me boy? Stem or stone?
Well, let's see now. On the more pragmatic level, I just finished reading in the letters. Joyce wrote someone about this episode. It was about two washerwomen dialoguing across a ford. Liffey River, presumably. And at the end of the tale, they turn into a tree and a stone.
And a stem is a tree, and it's organic. It has the flow of water, the movement, and organic undulation of water.
At one level, of course, this has a significance for writing, doesn't it?
Cursive writing?
Right. Remember, the Irish alphabet is entirely composed. All the characters are the names of trees.
And
it's a tree language, so this is the stem.
Whereas the Roman alphabet, or the phonetic alphabet, is a bunch of stones, little fragments, all neutral, like bricks.
Short against our ruin.
That in chapter 11 of Genesis, we're told that all the world spake one language, and the people said, "Come, let us make monuments worthy of our greatness," and they made bricks. And built vast towers and destroyed the unity of their culture and their language.
This, in a way, is what happens to Finnegan, isn't it? He is reduced, after the first thunderclap, to a hod carrier of bricks.
Big Meister Finnegan.
And the results on him are the same as those of, let's say, the Tower of Babel.
On the other hand, Finnegan represents that in another level, the Finn, or tribal cycle, to which we now return again.
He's the tribal man, the corporate expression of the tribal man.
Whereas HCE is the same tribal man broken up into little bits.
He's the corporate expression of the public, a group of individuals.
But the public as fragmented by mechanical industry
and all the visual impulses of writing and phonetic literacy as well.
And congregated into great crowds and great cities. Here comes everybody. HCE. And his opposite number is dear little Anna Liffey Pluribel.
Right, his wife at one level, and she's sort of the environmental forces.
The complementarity, the complement to HCE, the stone is the Anna Livia Pluribel.
The water.
The little ear world of the babbling brook, the gossipacious Anna Liffey.
These are kinetic too, isn't it?
The washers at the ford represent, of course, the idea of the dream world in which all things are scrubbed, and that the river of the collective unconscious.
It's sort of the palimpsest of the conscious and unconscious, isn't it?
Scrubbing and scrubbing by repetition the images of the day.
And it's also, you'll notice, not only dialogue, which allows sort of this scrubbing, and also the hendiadys, which we can get into, but it's gossip. The oral tradition living on in gossip.
And which is also the tribal world of village interplay and interface, to which the electric age brings us back so rapidly. Finn again, only this time wide awake.
All the philosophers, all the scientists now living are unaware that there is such a thing as visual space, and that they have been living in it for 25 centuries, and that it is suddenly dissolving and leaping up, causing a considerable disorientation in their world. But how the hell do you start talking to these big shots and explaining the ABCs of their world to them without creating an impression of megalomania, for some utter nonsense. It's like Alice in Wonderland, you know.
On a Winnipeg street by Tom used to do. I had a rowboat on the Assiniboine and a sailboat on the Red River, and they were about half a mile apart.
I see McLuhan as a 60s person in a way, where he was right for the 60s. What do you think he would be doing today? If he were here today, would he be saying the same stuff, or have things changed?
Yeah, no, he's a 60 person. 2060. That's when the crowd's going to know what he was saying. 2060, maybe early.
On page 41, there's that image that looks like Confusion Corner. The last street McLuhan would have crossed before going to the Red River, where he used to sail, not row. That's what he did on Assiniboine.
This could be anywhere in Winnipeg, Western world, with regard to the rowboat on the Assiniboine, by the Assiniboine or the Red River. Of course, I was brought up in Fort William, which is not too unlike. Well, actually, it's a totally different terrain. The soil is different. Yeah, it's not like this. I agree. This is now this is.
Of course, this is
Saskatoon. Don't tell me it reminds you of Fort William Harbor.
No, it doesn't.
It's too picture sweet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, picturesque. Picture what?
Picture squeak. Well, now this is literally the picturesque. And the picture consists in jumbling the senses. But using a point of view as using nature as if it were a picture. Literally. That's right. It's where the word came from. Making with nature as if it were a picture. This could be anywhere in Winnipeg by the Assiniboine or the Red River. And the sailboat on the Red River, and they were about half a mile apart.
After school.
For not a while on the one river, and when I went after school, I became aware of what the church claimed to believe. Now, I had no religious belief at that time at all. I was an agnostic. But I finally decided that if the church is what it says it is, you were also told how to test that hypothesis.
Right away. The more successful any business or any operation, the more invisible it is to itself. Father John Culkin, a friend of ours in New York here, has a way of putting this matter. He says, we don't know who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't a fish.
So Tony, what's on the tapes here is the real Marshall McLuhan. We can throw away the books because we don't need them. All that's in the best of what's in the books is in this room. And unquestionably, Tony and I will sit down in the next couple of days and talk about taking what's in this room and making it available again. So the next time Marshall McLuhan appears as the new comet on the horizon, all the pieces will be in place and all the stuff will have been hacked away that would slow down the meteor, you know.
You couldn't hold back the press. You can't hold back television. I'm not saying to hold it back. I'm simply saying study what it is. They can't find a little place for themselves.
But are you sure, are you absolutely sure that this is the birth struggle of a new civilization? Are you absolutely sure that it's not just the breakup?
No,
not just the breakup. See, that's what I think is perhaps the whole difference between North America and Europe, really, is that you over here do believe that. But you do over here.
You have a bigger stake in the old technology.
Well, no, but we're inclined to think that all these things that you imagine to be of such enormous importance, like, for instance, this thing we're doing now on television, because a lot of people goop at television for hours every day, you're inclined to think that's an enormously important thing. And I just think it's a sort of sign of the kind of vacuity that comes. Now, as Marshall does, 200 years ago, printing was invented. Then, 500 years ago, printing was invented. Life's never been the same since then.
No, absolutely true.
I don't agree with that. I think that printing or television, all these things, they affect the surface of man. But the fascination of life to me is the exact opposite that I find in Socrates and St. Augustine and St. Paul, all those people who lived before printing.
But not before writing.
Oh, well, if you like.
By the way, there's a wonderful book by Eric Havelock called Preface to Plato, in which he just mentions in passing that what Socrates' great contribution was to the dialectic was the ability to say, would you mind repeating that, please?
For them that's in them after hour spots, them divided souls, them that's catching the Holy Ghost through the music, minding their own. You know how you just be minding your own business, listening to your music, doing your thing. You know, however you doing it. The in the after hour spots, the love, with the love. You gotta have the love. So I'm sending this shit out to them like the 20-minute version.
This kind, the Socratic irony, the Socratic questioning was a playback. With the coming of writing, the possibility of playback came into human society for the first time. Socrates was very much a product of technology, new technology.
Well, I dance with the speaker till you hear it blow, then plug in a headphone, cause here it goes.
And I'm sending it out to me, and yeah, cause you know I deserve a shout out too. Yeah, send it out to me. Handle it.
The future of the future is the present. But very few people dare look at the present. This was always true.
Because almost every idea they possess is wrong. And so I'm constantly striving to upset people. As a pedagogic technique, by the way. That is pedagogy.
It's stimulating.
Yeah, it's called dynamic teaching.
One of the greatest artistic and literary worlds of all time. This is not, most of the writers I'm speaking about are extremely difficult. Like James Joyce, who incidentally is having a premiere tonight. I'm surprised that so many of you are avoiding it. The Portrait of the Artist is having a premiere tonight at local movie theaters. But Joyce's Finnegans Wake is one of the great world performances using all of the languages of the world simultaneously. And we live in such a great age. The Elizabethans lived in a chaotic, crazy world. The 5th century Athenians lived in a mad, this decaying and collapsing society, which led quickly to Greek tragedy, which is an account of their own misery. But the alphabet destroyed Greek society in 100 years. It was gone. The alphabet is a very destructive, fragmenting force, which the Greeks certainly did not survive. The Romans took them over in time to save something. That's reserved for us. Okay, but the effect of the alphabet on the Greeks was violent. institutions resulting from that misery that they went through. But they became so intensely individualistic and competitive that they destroyed themselves very quickly. The alphabet drives people toward extreme forms of egomania and competitiveness. But that is only by people who take it seriously. There are very, very few people who are serious about letters or about alphabetic.
I'm glad I got to hear it. It was on Spinoza and the multi-level exegesis.
The child of the future is a rather terrifying thought. It makes even science fiction look rather tame. What is in effect happening is a kind of extension not only of the learning process, but of consciousness itself into the outer environment, so that the child of the future is likely to be able to program consciousness to the same needs with which we have previously programmed curriculum. But I can't be terrified by such prospects, really, because these are also extensions of man. They are not ways, they are means of becoming more oneself rather than ways of becoming alienated from oneself. You can't possibly imagine a technology, except the most specialist fragmentary type, that could possibly alienate man from himself. They amplify our powers, they accelerate our powers, and they enrich the learning process enormously.
That's a funny thing, your balls are in your eyes. The print-oriented.
Remember the old gag about Archie met a bear, the bear was bulging, the bulge was Archie. The world swallowed itself media-wise.
It was medieval. It's 12 o'clock. And I'm running out of air.
Ah, good.
Did you ever run out of air?
Hot it up. And the air is back again, all expanded. We had fun. That was great.
Yeah. That grandchild. I mean, like let's keep writing that letter to that grandchild. Is it a he?
I think
it'd be corporate.
To write a letter. Write a letter to your grandma.
To your grandma. Well.
Oh, that would be a nice one too.
I'm my own grandma. You know.
That'll be the past tense. Can we drive you anywhere? We got the car. We're heading somewhere. Home.
Well, I'm going up to Fordham.
Let's go.
You just the 1 second race call last night. She was checking with me.
Right. Is she working today?
No, she's gone.
Okay.
Now, the piece is going to come out Monday. At least that was her best information yesterday. She said she was given a column of space. She said...
Very interesting.